Hello everyone. It has been a while and I'm sorry for the time in between videos. I've had a lot going on and I've had to take some time to deal with it. I have it well under control now and have had the time and mental capacity to resume making videos for you guys. So let's just get back into it, kick back, relax, and let this sweet darkness embrace you with these Let's Not Meet stories. I had this older roommate who lived upstairs, about 45 years old, skinny, tall guy, a bit socially awkward. Anyway, one day I'm chilling on the porch and he asks me if I'm gay and says he found me on Grindr, a gay dating app. I say yes, that is me, I am gay, and we talk briefly. The 4 months that followed was probably one of the worst experiences of my life. My nightmare begins. It started with a normal admiration, which I ignored or politely responded to or declined, such as asking to go to dinner, complimenting me, trying to actively hang out with me, coming into my space, hitting on me, sending me good morning texts, and then it turned into sexual texts and comments. I love the way you walk. He would send dick pics or tell me about his hookups, come to my room, etc. Most were over text. He also messaged me on Grindr, but I ignored it. I confronted him angrily about it after the dick pic, blocked him on Grindr even though I never messaged him there, and explained to him that I was not interested at all, like zero chance. I requested that we keep distance and only text if emergency or important for the house. He apologized and stopped, temporarily. Anyway, some time passes, I forget about it, but roommate did not. He started sending me angry texts, hostile ones, many of them homophobic and racist. I ignore them. He'd send me screenshots of social media and other things I did. He once walked into my bedroom while I was at work. My friend was sleeping over and he was terrified to see him. My friend kicked him out. The roommate later denied doing this. He started doing laundry like 2 to 3 times a week, going up and down the stairs 10 times or more each time. I lived in the basement where the laundry room was. He could see me when he would go downstairs. Landlord was informed, but did nothing. He would watch me from his window as I entered the house. His room has a street view. He would take my clothes out of the washer and hide them under the sofa in his room. This included my underwear, undershirts, socks, etc. I never found out he did that until he moved out, and then I found the clothes in his room. Told me he was going to put some magic from his culture on me. He said he was Satan reincarnated. He claimed to have telekinetic powers and the ability to get his wishes granted. Sent me a "I really love you, but I also hate you" text on Saturday night with a picture of him clubbing holding a drink. Sent me nudes. Well, I have many other examples that I do not want to bore you with. So you're probably thinking, why didn't I try to stop it? I did. I kept records of everything I could. The landlord was informed about it several times, actually, to which he did nothing. The landlord would either ignore me or promise to take care of the issue. I later found out he did actually message the roommate, but the conversation went nowhere. The landlord offered to put a lock on the basement door after much convincing. I called the police and informed them. They said it was a civil dispute and that there's not much that they could do. I asked if they could just give him a call or something. They said they would, but I didn't get any follow-up. The only way they'd get involved is if there was a direct threat made towards me. They wouldn't even look at the text. They say take it to court. I couldn't get out of my lease agreement. I was contractually obligated to pay, so I had to remain for the remainder of my contract. I called the tenant board in my city and they said such an issue has to be taken to court to prove that him staying in the house is unsafe for me, or I could just move out. But they couldn't void my lease agreement. I blocked his number by calling my phone provider, but this didn't stop him from finding other means and platforms to contact me. My only option was a physical threat of violence, but all my friends advised me against that. The man was seriously sick. He once claimed that he had a romantic partner who did not love him back, and then the partner had a sudden death when his brakes didn't work while he was driving. The roommate smiled creepily after telling me that story, insinuating he made it happen. So threatening him was a risk. Plus, with me waiting on a response from the police or the landlord, interacting with the guy in any way would not work in my favor. I got 2 locks, one for my bedroom and one for the basement. He still would use the laundry though, he would use the front porch. He would still occasionally message me, he would still be in the shared kitchen, shared washroom. Every interaction with him was terrifying and extremely uncomfortable. He would make every effort to interact with me, to watch me, to message me, to eavesdrop on me. Eventually, his lease ends and the landlord basically forces him to move out. The roommate resists and threatens to stay. I still got occasional messages after that, on Grindr, out of all places. After I've blocked him several times on the app, he'd make a new account weekly. I never responded, not once. It was all him talking to himself. Always the same, a nice message that I ignore, followed with hostile or overly sexual or threatening messages. His attempts at communication cease now, but Facebook and Instagram still constantly remind him as a friend. I blocked him, but they recommend him again after he makes new accounts. Before I begin to tell you what happened to me, I will tell you the background. You should know that I've spoken about it to very few people because it has traumatized me a lot, and so I force myself to structure it so that I can tell you about it and so that it doesn't happen to other people. It happened during the month of May 2019 during my 3rd year, so I was 14 years old. My parents had separated a few months earlier and I rarely went to my father's house because he was far from my school. I'm very paranoid about watching threads and horror movies, and I always feel like I'm being watched from a movie that marked me when I was young. Even in places where I can't be seen, I never really feel safe. Even less so now. On May 2nd, 2019, I was in class, and through the window, I see someone, a tall old man who's not moving, and he's looking at me. You have to know that my classroom is on the 1st floor, and that when you are in the classroom, you can see inside of the rooms. Yet he is staring at me really intensely. I turn my eyes for a few seconds and then I look at him again and he was no longer there. No more news for a few days. 3 days later, on the 5th of May, I was at my father's and it was night. I had just fallen asleep around 1 a.m. because I have insomnia. And a little later that night I woke up petrified and frozen if someone was watching me. Instinctively and being very curious, I got up, went to the exit of my room and opened the door. The bathroom being opposite, I saw through the mirror that there was someone there, so I turned around very violently. There was this man whom I'd seen in the courtyard, and he was smiling at me. He was blowing on the glass window, and he drew a man smiling before leaving as if nothing had happened. Like the first event, I didn't talk about it because I'm a very secretive person who doesn't like to talk about this kind of thing, even if, sincerely, I was scared. I looked everywhere so much I was paralyzed. My paranoia was even more present. From that moment on, nothing happened. For a long time, I must say, I even started to forget about it. On May 29th, I went to the city because I had an appointment, and I took a bus to go to my mother's work when it was over. This bus, when I take it, I end up being alone after a while because I get off at the terminus. I have like 20 minutes of travel time. I had a very bad feeling, and I don't know why, but the driver looked familiar. I'd seen him somewhere before. When the last person got out of the bus, I told myself that I had to get out, that I was in danger, and I could feel my heart racing. I looked everywhere. I started to get agitated for some unknown reason, and that's when I understood the bus driver was the man who was watching me. He was there, and he looked at me with a big smile, as if he understood that I had recognized him. I pressed the stop button to get off as quickly as possible, but he kept going. He even accelerated, and I panicked. I walked to the very back of the bus to put as much distance as possible. I activated the SOS mode on my phone and used it very quickly. It's a trick that allows me to send an SOS message to certain people by taking photos and audio and video recordings, so it's very practical. So I used it and I shared my location with my parents and called the police without taking my eyes off the driver. Outside, I wasn't in the city at all. I was really in the country and I couldn't think at all. I was totally frozen. I was imagining a lot of scenarios, plus my phone had switched off because I'd run out of battery. I was all alone, and we reached a busy road, so I approached the window and knocked on it and gave a message to the other drivers. A few tens of minutes later, the cops arrived. I deduced that someone had called the police and they found us. Quickly, while running, I approached the driver and pressed the button to open one of the doors and ran out towards the police. A few days later, after a testimony and an investigation, I learned that the driver was a serial killer who raped and tortured his victims by sequestering them before beheading them. Since that day, I have been afraid when I take the bus, and I take it every morning and evening. I'm in London, UK. We're in a Tier 4 lockdown. Stay in your home, only go out for one shopping trip or exercise. No mixing with people outside of your own home or support bubble, etc., etc. With a mutating strain of COVID-19 rampaging through London, hospital beds are at capacity and death toll rising. It made sense to stay indoors as much as possible. But every human has a breaking point, and mine was 8 days of wandering around my one-bedroom apartment. I talk myself out on Zoom and run out of conversations to talk to myself about. At 10 p.m. New Year's Eve, I decided to get some air allowed within the rules of Tier 4 and go for a quick walk to the perimeter around the local park, all on main roads. Takes about 40 minutes. The plan was to stop at a local grocery store and pick up a bottle of red wine on the way back, stepped out with mask firmly affixed, and started walking. One thing that I was not prepared for was the eerily empty and almost silent streets. As it was just below freezing, I decided to hustle and cut through some side streets first. In hindsight, big mistake. Navigating myself through very quiet side streets, I neared the park when I saw a van, Mercedes Sprinter size, turn in and rapidly approach me. Deciding to not let them pass before crossing, I came to a halt. The van began to slow as it approached me. I could see the cab was occupied by two men between the ages of 25 and 40. Then it stopped. Windows rolled down, one man leaned out. "Hey friend, we are lost. Can you tell me to X station?" The accent was not from the UK, and I'm not going to state its origin, as I'm not going to get into stereotypes. Alarm bells began to ring out immediately. What was the van doing out at this time, and why directions to the local train station in the middle of a Tier 4 lockdown? The van had stopped, so the side door was facing me. I stepped a few paces back and gave directions very quickly. I did not understand all. I think best if you show us. With that, he opens his door and the side door van opens to reveal another two men. I just turned and ran down the side street that I had emerged from. Shit, take the van around, I'll follow him. Knowing that these guys were fitter and younger than I, a foot race to my apartment building was out of the question. The only advantage I had was a head start and hopefully local knowledge of the streets. The side street leads to a larger street that has homes with all large hedges. I ran past a few homes and entered the front garden of a house that had the most imposing and opaque hedge. It was unlit. I ducked down, lucky for me that the house did not have a motion sensor light. With a few seconds, I heard footsteps. They went past me, stopped. I peeked through the hedge vegetation, very limited view, to see the man who had asked for directions. He was a few houses down from me and on the opposite side of the street. He was looking around, then the sound of a vehicle. I thought, oh no, the van. Lucky for me, it was a car. The man looked at his phone, looked around, pretending he was checking something, and then walked, leaving the residential street as quickly as possible. The car continued its way. I waited for another 10 minutes, sitting behind the hedge in the front garden, practicing an explanation if the house lights came on. The house stayed unlit. After my allotted time, I arose and quickly walked back to my apartment building, keeping to the shadows and reacting to every sound. I made it back, bolted the front door. Only when I sat down did I understand what I had just avoided. All this for some air and a bottle of red. I poured myself a black coffee and debated calling the police. But what would I say? Had anything really happened that they could act on? Intuition of being kidnapped or being in danger is not enough evidence. Plus, being a man, this would not be a priority, especially on a night that they would be overstretched on. I just waited in the new year, realizing that I had a lucky escape and that I should stock up on red wine at a more decent time. So this happened to me at some point between the cusp of fall and winter last year, 2019, with no pandemic raging yet. At the time, my husband and I both worked weekend night jobs, him in IT service and me as a CNA at the local hospital ICU. As we had no reason to be up and awake during the day, we lived a rather vampire-like schedule, sleeping all day and staying up all night, 4 days off, 3 12-hour shifts a week. It worked. The best part about being a night dweller is the fact that you can go, or used to be able to go, in the middle of the night and do your grocery shopping. No lines, no hustle and bustle. You just got to go at your own leisure and dodge the occasional pallet of stock or graveyard shift worker who is filling up the shelves and probably wishing anyone present would quit taking things away right as he stocks them. Anyways, it's 2 a.m. peak energy time for me and Hubs. The Walmart is in a pretty decent part of town and everything is well lit, so I typically don't feel nervous walking around in the middle of the night. Hubs did tours in Iraq and has a good head on his shoulders, so even less reason to be concerned, right? Right. As we walked through the entrance, my eyes immediately drifted towards the seasonal selection. I have ADD and I'm a pain to shop with, according to Hubs, as I tend to wander off when something neat catches my attention. Unbeknownst to me, Hubs noticed a small gaggle of young adults behaving rather immaturely, i.e. riding around on the electric handicap carts, intentionally smashing into displays, causing some general havoc. Oblivious to this, I'm still wandering around while he patiently follows after, filling our cart here and there along the way. Hub sees these kid adults causing more trouble near the back of the store in the food almost shoes section, but once again, my attention was on more important things, like looking at the blind bag toys I have absolutely no need for. We make it to the end of our shopping journey and head towards the self-checkout since they don't bother staffing the actual lanes in the middle of the night. While he scans and bags, I excuse myself to the restroom and to go after a couple Pokemon on my Pokemon Go game. I dilly-dally long enough that he's checked out and back at the car by the time I come out, so I've made my way over to the compact SUV, modern-day station wagon we own, where he's busy loading the groceries into the trunk. Hubs is very particular about how things are packed, which is fine by me, so we have a system. He loads, I return the cart to the cart holder thing. While I wait for him to finish loading, I hear a bunch of snickering and laughter coming from the car to the right of ours, so the cart and Hubs is between me and the other vehicle. I wasn't aware at the time, but these kid adults had been sitting in their car the entire time he was unloading our spoils of war into the trunk, mocking and jeering at him for basic things like what he was wearing on his shirt, it was a Pokemon logo if anyone cares, and other trivial things. Once I got there, however, all focus turned towards me. It took me a second to realize that they were actually addressing us, but soon I could make out what they were saying. They were laughing at my husband, asking him if he actually fucked a whale like me. Now, I'm no string beaner by a long shot. I have some decent curves going on, so they honed in on my size and appearance. In my defense, does anyone really dress up to go to Walmart at 2 a.m. and encourage each other to keep throwing pot shots in our direction? At the fact we were together, anything they could think of to make fun of us with. Being the sensitive, self-conscious soul that I am, I could already feel my eyes start to water. I figured we would just finish what we were doing and leave them behind in their gloating and foolishness, but Hubs wasn't going to have anything of it. It was one thing, according to him, for them to mock him, but when they started being cruel about me, he'd hit his limit. He's a truly nonviolent man, but when he was riled up by what they were saying, he balled up his fist, raised his voice, and told them to shut up. With a decent smack against their side window, which had been rolled up on Hub's approach, my knight in shining armor coming to my defense. That action caused a series of quick and chaotic reactions. The young men, 3 of them, stared angrily, yelling, and I distinctively heard one of them ask the other if he wanted his gun, to which the ringleader said, "Yeah, give it." Holy Pokeballs. I tell my husband to get in the car in a panicked rush, deciding to abandon the shopping cart in front of their car in hopes of creating an obstacle for them. I fling myself into the SUV, and by this point, one young man has started smacking on the hood of our car, while another steps behind it trying to block us in. I vividly remember through my blurry vision seeing a young woman in the backseat of the vehicle looking somewhat embarrassed as she mouthed, "I'm sorry," in my direction. No time to think about that, not with the ringleader appearing from the car at any moment. Hubs pulled the car in reverse and the young man behind us has no choice but to move, lest he actually become a human pancake. Hubs drives off out of the parking lot like a bat out of hell, and it is clearly evident that my cart obstacle did little to delay them, as their Dodge Dart was right on our tail, flying down the road right behind us. We made it through one green light before they caught up to us, sidling up to the lane next to us as I'm trying to remember to breathe, thoughts going in 100 different directions. Thanks again, ADD brain. I see the passenger window rolled down, and out comes a hand with a gun pointed in my, or rather Hub's, direction. I scream something to the effect of "they have a gun," though I'm sure it came out as an incoherent shrieking in actuality. Hubs got the point though and chose that moment to swerve directly into them with our vehicle, leaving them no choice but to drive onto the median or be hit by a bigger vehicle going 70 to 80 miles an hour. They swerved, which slowed them down, so Hubs hit the gas and kept driving, ignoring red lights along the way. Finally pulling myself together, I dialed 911 on my cell phone, and since the police station wasn't exactly nearby, the operator arranged to have some cops meet us in a local church a mile or two from where we currently were. Hubs keeps driving forward, car still at our heels, and he somehow managed to swerve a turn in the middle of an intersection while making it look like we intended to go forward. The other car flies on while we tail it to the cops at the church. They took down our statements and sent a few cars out to try and find them. I was completely useless when it comes to details, but Hubs came through to save the day and could tell them the make, model, color of the car and describe details about the individuals. All I could remember in my mind was the face of the girl who mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." And lo and behold, I kid you not, one of the officers took us to his car, flipped through his fancy police computers, and on the screen was the image of the girl I'd seen in the Walmart parking lot. Another click and the same young men, save for one, were on the screen. Apparently, these upstanding citizens had been confronted by the police department on nights prior. I wish I could remember the charges, but my mind was overwhelmed at that point, because most of the details are a blur. Like my mind intentionally tried to redact things to protect itself or something. Anyways, needless to say, I developed a genuine anxiety about going to Walmart in the middle of the night after that point. Thankfully, we both have transitioned to daytime jobs since then, so we shared the pain of daywalkers' normal grocery store woes these days. So hey, jerks at Walmart, let's not meet again, okay? Hey guys, I really appreciate you guys stopping in and coming in and spending a little bit of time with me. I know it's been a while since I put a video up. Like I said in the intro, I've had a lot of things going on, but it's all dealt with now, so we're going to be putting out some regular videos. I've got a link storm down in the description. I've got everything from my Discord, my Patreon. If you guys want to support the channel monetarily, Patreon's always there. Really appreciate it. Get some nifty little perks. I've also got my Twitch channel down there. Now that I've got everything sorted out, I should be going live on my Twitch a lot more. We are going to be playing some different games over there. If you guys want to come check it out, you're more than welcome to. But I really appreciate you guys spending your time here with me. Always remember, wear your masks, wash your hands, and let the darkness take hold.